Months into the people's uprising in Bahrain, Saudi-backed security forces are escalating their crackdown on protesters, rallying against the regime's decades-long rule. The situation is getting worse, despite calls by human rights organizations on Manama to stop its brutal behavior. Let's take a closer look.
Detention of over 1,000 people, court-martials, demolition of mosques, and arbitrary dismissal of public employees. This time, regime forces raided a medical centre in the east. This is Sitra's main medical centre, surrounded by police vehicles. Reports say several people were arrested after security forces raided the hospital. Far from protecting people's lives, police brutality and pro-government thugs' violence have wreaked havoc on the streets.
Directly shot with what the police are using now is birdshot. They're shooting spraying birdshot, which is tiny little lumps of lead, which are very able to kill people, but in fact get embedded in the bodies of these demonstrators. So they're spraying them with birdshot, and then they're throwing tear gas into the houses of the people indiscriminately, whether there's old people there or young people. They throw tear gas at them. But the demonstrators at the moment are doing this kind of catch and run situation where they just run away as fast as they can once the word is out that the police are charging in.
But the pro-change movement in the tiny Persian Gulf monarchy fails to get weakened, despite Manama's ruthless repression. With Bahrain unable to stop the protests by itself, the Persian Gulf Cooperation Council intervened to make sure the protests won't succeed in Bahrain, as it could inspire demonstrations in their own countries. Many say it was the US that gave the go-ahead to Saudi Arabia to enter Bahrain and crush the anti-regime protesters.
I believe strongly that the government of Bahrain has a window. That window was given to it by its strongest ally, the United States and UK. In that window, the Bahraini government should do its best to arrest as many as possible, to start a campaign or to wage a campaign of terror against the people of Bahrain, that include human rights activists, that include political opposition, include every single human being in the country that raised the voice against the monarchy.
This is not the first time the Bahraini government brutally and systematically crushes anti-regime protests. The preceding popular uprising in the country took place in the 1990s, when people joined forces to call for political reforms and a democratic government. The confined protesters, however, were dealt with ruthlessly at that time as well. Analysts say the new movement has a much greater chance of victory, despite Manama's ongoing crackdown.
Right now, what the Al Khalifa have done is nothing compared to the 90s. The 90s, they killed people, they arrested people, but the amount of atrocities is not even half or near the half of what is happening today. All these elements show us that the events in Bahrain these days are taking much front page, much front line than it took in the 90s.